They said it couldn't be done, that rural folks couldn't get electricity. But where determination is strong, the impossible suddenly becomes possible. This is the story of how local farmers banded together to power their lives 75 years ago. This is the story of Corn Belt Energy. In this day and age, we tend to take electricity for granted, assuming it will always be there to power our lives. But that wasn't the case 75 years ago. While most folks living in cities and towns enjoyed the benefits of electricity, America's rural families were left in the dark, and life on the farm was difficult without electricity. Every hour of daylight was needed for work in the fields, which meant that barn work started before dawn with unreliable and dangerous lanterns. Even a spark could destroy a hay-filled barn, and farmers knew the danger all too well. Without refrigeration, milk was kept on ice and had to be below 50 degrees or the dairy would refuse to accept it.
I was always thankful. I know Mom and Dad and my grandparents talked about not having electricity when they lived on the farm and how difficult it was, how they milked by hand. And when I was very young, my mom and dad had a dairy farm and they did milk by hand and spent many hours doing that.
But that made you do a lot of work before daylight. So we'd have to take a lantern down the barn and milk those cows. And the harness of horses, they had to be brushed off.
Without electricity, water had to be pumped by hand and boiled on the stove. Washing clothes without electricity was a back-breaking all-day affair that involved pumping your own well water, heating it over a wood-burning fire, scrubbing the clothes on a washboard, then wringing them out and hanging them on the clothesline. And once the clothes were dry the next day, it was time to iron. Literally, a 6 or 7 pound wedge of iron, which had to be heated on the wood stove and frequently cleaned.
It was hard on my mom that we didn't have electricity because of the difficulty in cooking, and she also worked out in the fields with my dad.
Without indoor plumbing, weekly baths were standard, and outhouses were a normal part of everyday life on the farm.
And we had an outside toilet. We didn't have anything inside. And it was tough, but we got along.
I do remember a lot of the hardships. The one that was our job at that age was we had I don't know how many gallon. It was a huge water tank for watering our cows, and it was our job to keep that pump full by hand.
But the thing most desired by those without electricity was adequate lighting. The circle of light cast from a kerosene lantern was small, making it difficult for one to read or sew without squinting. Lighting the kerosene lamp and keeping it lit was frustrating, and children barely had enough illumination for homework. By the 1930s, 90% of townfolk had electricity, while only 10% of America's farms had power. Investor-owned utilities just didn't see the return on investment of building miles of line out to electrify only a few farms. And even if they did build lines out to the farms, utility companies assumed most farmers wouldn't be able to afford electricity anyway. M.J. Cleary, Jr. of Gridley was a farmer who lived a mile from Illinois-Iowa Power Company lines. Anxious for power, he called upon the area manager. He named a preposterous figure for building a line out to our farm. The price was clear out of reason, accounting to something like $20 a month minimum. At a time when the average laborer made $1 a day, $20 was a lot of money. Joining with some neighbors, Cleary went back for another visit. We went to Bloomington for an interview with the power company officials. They were nice people, friendly and all that, but they were not ready to extend their lines out into the rural areas. They said the cost would be prohibitive. And that's where electric cooperatives like Corn Belt Energy came into the picture. The mid-1930s found our nation reeling from the devastating effect of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. Life was hard for millions, but the lack of electricity made it even more unbearable for a vast majority of rural Americans. The Roosevelt administration believed that if private enterprise could not supply electricity to the people, then it was the duty of the government to do so. So, in 1935, the Rural Electrification Administration, known as the REA, was created. With financing ready to go, REA representatives visited rural communities across the country to get farmers to band together to bring electricity to their homesteads. By 1938, rural areas in central Illinois and elsewhere were still dark. That's when a group of local rural leaders organized a meeting in rural El Paso in Woodford County. At that meeting, leaders from 3 counties decided to organize a rural electric cooperative, and they set an organizational meeting in Bloomington for September 22nd. We knew we had to take the initiative ourselves. We couldn't count on a power company doing the job for us, recalls Ivan Snow of El Paso. With assistance from Farm Bureau leaders and farm advisors, the planning began. Local leaders were selected to serve as Corn Belt Incorporators. This group was soon joined by T.H. Ted Hafer of Bloomington, who would later become the co-op's first manager. At the September 22nd meeting at Bloomington High School, more than 1,000 Illinois farmers and families attended that meeting. Charlie Falkenwald, one of the REA's main leaders, told the group that the Rural Electrification Administration would reserve $1 million for the project if the sign-up was completed in 45 days. The drive for members was on. It wasn't a hard sell. The rural people understood the value and benefits of electricity and gladly paid the $5 membership fee. Within 6 weeks, 2,400 members were on board, resulting in one of the quickest and most thorough co-op sign-ups on record. On November 1st, 1938, the REA approved just over $1 million in loans to finance the Corn Belt project. Co-op employees and contractors got to work, and the first co-op pole was set on April 10, 1939, near Kappa in North McLean County. The big day came on August 7th of that year, when the switch was thrown at Kappa substation, turning on the lights to 101 farm homes, just 11 months after the first co-op meeting.
Well, when electricity first came as far as being energized, I remember being in a one-room schoolhouse about 1.5 miles from here. One of the servicemen came around to make sure that we had electricity in the schoolhouse, and we did, of course, and we knew that we had electricity at home then, so because the electricity come by our place to get to the schoolhouse. And we couldn't wait till it got dark so we could turn the lights on.
And I can remember Mr. Ellis, one of the ones who was the first board members, talking about going out to the barn and having to take a lantern out and hanging in the barn. And when they finally got electricity, he was one of the first when they got electricity, and he could go out to the barn and have just flip a switch and there was this light, and he didn't have to carry that lantern around with him, and everything was such a big excitement, really. People were excited about getting electricity.
Life on the farm changed dramatically. Refrigeration increased food safety. Electric pumps provided fresh well water, which increased sanitation. The drudgery of housework faded quickly with the end to sad irons and wood cook stoves. Radios became sources of education and entertainment, and electric lights provided generous illumination for house and barn.
I think indoors, the main thing was the lights in the house. They were brighter, of course, and we didn't have to worry about lamps getting tipped over or a fire or something like that. I mean, it was a much safer situation for us.
The radio was another good thing it brought in because you could get markets on it. And first radio we got was an Atwater Kent, and had a great big round speaker, and you could either plug into that with earplugs or sit there right close to it and listen to it.
The changes in farm work were no less remarkable. A simple 1-horsepower motor became the farmer's right-hand man, operating grain grinders, hay lifts, and so much more.
Oh, like sheep shearing. When we raised sheep when we were a kid, and Dad used to take a pair of hand shears and shear the sheep. Well, you could buy electric clippers and clip all the wool off of them. You had to cut the wool off and sell it in the spring. But when we got that electricity out here, it was wonderful. My kids began to think we really began to live when we got lights.
Soon, the new cooperative set up its first office in downtown Bloomington at 508 North Main Street. In 1939, Corn Belt Electric Cooperative moved into the former Farm Bureau office at 109 West Monroe, then moved again in 1943 to 315 East Front Street. Ted Hafer was Corn Belt's first general manager, taking the job on interim for 2 months, but ultimately staying with the co-op for 3 decades. He was a fiscally conservative man and a strong manager who led by example. Employees recall that he was very conscious of the fact that the co-op couldn't spend money that was hard to come by from the members. In the early 1940s, most line construction halted due to World War II. The co-op dealt with supply shortages and supported the war effort through scrap drives and purchasing war bonds. Electric power enabled many farms to keep on with livestock and dairy production while so many young men were off serving their country. By the co-op's 10th anniversary in 1948, construction had completed to nearly everyone in the service area who wanted electricity, and more than 95% of the farms in the territory were now receiving power. In 1953, Corn Belt was serving over 5,000 member owners and moved to a new headquarters facility at the intersection of Old Route 66 and Highway 150 in South Bloomington. The co-op would remain on Morrissey Drive for almost 50 years. In 1967, Ted Hafer retired, and Jerry Beer was named as Corn Belt's second general manager.
Jerry had a great personality. He spoke very well, was good standing up in front of groups and speaking. He was heavily involved in a lot of local activities throughout the community, and I think he was just well respected within our industry, especially the cooperatives in Illinois.
Major advancements in technology made the cooperative more efficient and responsive to members' needs throughout the 70s and 80s.
We went to a lot more hydraulic controlled equipment rather than hand operated. We went to the hydraulic part of it there, easier on the guys, and we could get a lot more done in a day's time. Hydraulics was probably was the biggest improvement that ever come about.
Technologically, I think that the biggest impact was as we started to get into what we call the computer age. First ones that we had was a Sycor machine that we were using for billing. We switched our billing from a 2-month to 1 month. We eliminated self-read for our members because their members used to read their own meters and then turn it in, and that's how they got billed.
But technology wasn't the only thing causing change. The members were changing too.
We transitioned during that time even further to starting to serve more, as we say, city and suburban subdivisions. At that time, 1968 was the first time we had a franchise agreement with the City of Bloomington. So we were just starting to do that. Same with the town of Normal. We were starting to serve people in the town of Normal. So we started to see the beginning of the change from a rural membership, which was all farm orientated, to some of the new housing developments and people moving out into what we would call suburbia today.
In 1979, Jerry Beer left Corn Belt to work for a national cooperative financial institution, and Jeff Reeves assumed the role of president and CEO. Under Reeves' leadership, the 80s ushered in unprecedented growth for the co-op, particularly in the community of Bloomington Normal.
The growth around Bloomington, McLean County, it started back in the 80s, early 80s, I would say, mid 80s, something like that. And it just went crazy. It was unbelievable. We were building new lines. We were having the growth, new houses being built. Everyone wanted to do services. And we had a hard time keeping up.
The Bloomington Normal community begins to grow into rural areas, and Corn Belt starts installing underground conductor in subdivisions and commercial areas. The demands and power needs of farmers also grows during this time, with grain drying and handling systems, prompting Corn Belt to invest in three-phase facilities in many areas. The local co-op becomes a more sophisticated utility in order to manage growth and greater demand. In 1998, Corn Belt joined the Customer Select program, offering a supplier choice for Nicor gas customers throughout Illinois. With variable therm rates, local service, and no extra fees, Corn Belt now supplies natural gas to over 2,000 customers. A major change came in 1999 when Corn Belt Electric Cooperative, serving 18,000 members throughout 10 counties, merged with Illinois Valley Electric Cooperative based in Princeton, serving 6,000 members throughout 8 counties. Corn Belt Energy Corporation is formed.
Illinois Valley and Corn Belt Electric decided to pursue the concept to see if there was enough benefits to both cooperatives to ultimately merge. And we ended up taking it to the membership, and the membership voted for it.
And the change that came about because of that merger had a lot of good involved with it.
From the long standpoint, I believe both organizations became stronger of the merger and will continue to be able to offer services to each other and continue to, just from the pure economies of scale, be able to serve our membership at a cheaper cost.
And I think both boards were determined to make this work, and that's all it took, really. And so we're one board. We aren't divided on anything. We all have our different opinions, but when the end of the board meeting comes, we're all in one.
As the cooperative grew because of the merger and the suburban explosion of McLean County, Corn Belt needed to expand to a larger facility. In early 2002, employees packed up their belongings and made the move to a new headquarters on Highway 150 near Downs. With plenty of room for office workers and adequate garage space for equipment and supplies, complete with an on-site pole yard. In 2008, Corn Belt completed a multi-year installation of digital meters for all members for increased efficiency and information management. With a digital meter system, the co-op can quickly ping meters to see if service has been restored and track hourly usage data for the members' benefit. In many respects, electric cooperatives have successfully completed their original mission to bring power to rural areas. Today, we face a new challenge: helping our member owners use energy wisely. We now serve over 34,000 households and businesses throughout 18 counties in central Illinois, making us one of the largest energy co-ops in the state.
If you think of what we have to offer, how many people can own their own utility? And when I say that, and that brings a thought and said, well, what do you mean I own my own utility? Well, you're the owner, part owner of that utility that serves you. So you have a vote. You elect a board of directors that represent you.
Members can see what we're doing, where we're going. They can come to board meetings. They can talk to directors. They can elect directors. They can be as much a part of the cooperative as they want to be.
As serving on the board, I try to remember where Corn Belt has come from. And I don't want to ever forget that as we go into the future, so that we are caring, we do work for our members. You are not a customer to us. You are part of us.
Corn Belt's third president and CEO, Jeff Reeves, will retire in 2013 after more than 30 years of service, ushering in a new chapter for the co-op. So, here we stand, 75 years later. A lot has changed, but our cooperative values have remained constant. Corn Belt Energy is a not-for-profit cooperative, which means we're owned by the people, like you, who receive electricity from us. We're proud of our rural heritage as we power the lives of members who increasingly rely on the benefits of electricity. We support the communities we serve through local jobs, education programs for schools, civic support, and economic development initiatives. We're here to help you use energy wisely and to provide you with safe, reliable, affordable power. That's the cooperative difference.